Yeah, let's bring in Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who joins us now on the program. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
Let's just pick up right there. You know, we've been able to hear from you for over the last couple of days. Just want to get your reaction to those latest details.
So, you know, this has been a long road. We've had, since I became Lieutenant Governor and Governor Abbott was elected back in 2014, we've had 5 shootings now. Walmart, Sutherland Springs, Odessa, Santa Fe, and this shooting. 90 or so people killed. Plus, we've lost over 50 officers in the line of duty killed by violent criminals. So this takes a toll on us. And when we sit down with law enforcement, we expect to be told the truth in our briefing. I was in the briefing with the governor and Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz and about 20 other people on Wednesday before we held our press conference. And we were told a different set of facts than we now know. And whether that was purposeful or whether that was because people, and that was about 24 hours after the shooting, because they were still in a state of chaos and maybe had not had any sleep and were in shock and misremembered things. The bottom line is we have to have the facts and the truth, because it only makes the situation worse for the families when they hear changing stories, and particularly when they heard about this 45-minute delay, or a security officer who wasn't there even though we were told he was there. And the governor, as he mentioned yesterday, took copious notes along the entire, I was sitting next to him, he took copious notes. We all asked questions, and we were told a different story than we now know. And so the families are angry.
Governor,
they have a right to be angry. Yes.
And so to clarify, Lieutenant Governor, whether or not you were misled, whether or not it was a lie, whether or not it was a mistake, you were told a different story. What story was it that you were told?
Well, we were told that there was a security officer, and they were a little hazy on how the engagement went, but that a security officer was there. Well, it turned out he was not on campus. He drove onto the campus, but he was not on campus as we were told and led to believe. No one mentioned the fact that there was this 45-minute to an hour hold by the chief of the police or the school district while there were still shots being fired. Now, we believe that most of those shots were being fired into the door of the wall to hold back law enforcement, but we don't know. And so imagine the parent who has to go through this for the rest of their life. And they will be thinking, was my child still alive and could have been saved? So that was another fact that we weren't told. And so this is heartbreaking. This is horrendous. And I've been, as I said, with these shootings, one of the parts of this job that you don't ever want is to have to go to a funeral of particularly a child, but anyone killed in a shooting, or one of our police officers killed in the line of duty. And you know, we've had a lot of funerals, a lot of memorial services, and a lot of hospital visits. So I take this personally, and I know the governor takes it personally. And for me, it's 140 or 150 people killed in Texas in the last 6 or 7 years of collective anger when we're not told the truth.
Lieutenant Governor, ultimately, now that we do know the information and we think we know better what transpired, did the police act the right way based on what they knew? I mean, with a full appreciation of what law enforcement does, we know that. Based on what you know, did they follow the right protocols to try to get those kids?
No. Colonel Steve McCraw, head of our state troopers, who took over the investigation after the fact with the Texas Rangers, they were asked to come in and investigate this. He was right yesterday. They did not follow protocol. But let me be very clear about something, because there's been some misunderstanding or misreporting, and that is people feel like the case in Parkland where no one went in. These police went in within 4 minutes or so after the shooter went in through that unlocked door, which should have never happened, that open door. But they were there 3 or 4 minutes, and they bravely encountered him, and they were shot. Some of them were wounded. No one left the school. They hunkered down in the hallway, about 19 of them, during this time, so that he did not escape anywhere else in the school. So these policemen did the right thing at the beginning, and many wanted to go in. And the police chief, look, this is a 6-man or 7-man police department. The police chief, and you know he'll leave this with the rest of his life, but he was in charge. He was the incident commander. He made that decision to hold. And again, he'll have to live with that the rest of his life. But make no mistake, no policeman ran out. They stayed. And in the end, by Border Patrol, or a combination of people led by the Border Patrol, went in against this assault weapon. And you know, Pete, you know that when you go in there, 1, 2, 3, or more of them could have been killed. So the police individuals did the right thing and were brave. And I know the people outside, the parents were hearing these shots, and some thought maybe the police were not doing anything. But it was the decision to hold that was the mistake, that did not follow protocol. It was the security officer not on the campus that was the mistake. It was an open door held by a rock that allowed that person to get it. And look, and that teacher will live with that decision also. But my focus through this, and when we had the press conference on Wednesday, the mic was being handled from the governor to introduce me to speak, and that's when Beto O'Rourke stood up and made a total ass of himself. And what offended me was not that he interrupted me speaking. What offended me was that he put himself above these families. And so that's my only focus. And I said at the time when they ushered him out, I said, can't we spend just a day or a week focus on these families and the pain? The pain is unimaginable. I've been there before with these families. It's unimaginable. As my pastor once said, when you go to these events, there's nothing you can say. There's nothing I can say as lieutenant governor to heal that pain. You just are there out of respect. And that was disrespectful what he did. And so I canceled all my events. I said, I'm not doing any more campaign events or fundraising for a couple of weeks. We just put all this aside. Our only focus should be on the families. And what has made this worse for these families is the changing of the facts almost on a daily basis. And there has to be accountability for it.
Well, there has to be accountability, no question about it. We have to learn the lessons. Some of the lessons we learned from past shootings, it didn't seem like we learned that. Maybe we finally will. Is there going to be accountability for those officers who the governor says misled him?
That will have to be all sorted out, and that will be those are going to be local decisions made by the school district, or that will be handled there. And again, I want to separate this out. The police that went in were brave. The police that were on hold were following their orders. Eventually, some went in and said, "It's time to go," but it was a bad decision, and that decision
can I just say
cost lives. Yeah.
Lieutenant Governor, can I ask you really quickly? I find this piece of information, you have direct access to information that we do not have.
Yes.
But I hear you saying there's fog of war, there's a lot of brave officers ready to go in. The police chief in Uvalde made the call to hold back. There are reports he didn't know if there were children alive still in the room. He didn't know if it was a hostage situation. But we've heard reports of these 911 calls coming from inside the classroom. And again, you have information we do not have. Were those 911 calls not being relayed to officers on the scene? Did that Uvalde police chief not have access to information that there were children alive in the room?
Well, we still don't know that, and the interviews are still going on. One of the problems we have across America is different police are on different bands, and whether they got that information directly or not. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. They should have gone in. They should have already been in at that point. That's the point that we're making here. He viewed it, and this was not the Uvalde police chief. This was the police chief of the school district, a 6 or 7 man department. Okay, did he have the experience to make that decision then? He was the incident commander. It was on his campus, and that was the key. And look, after the Santa Fe shooting, we put in over $100 million into hardening our schools, into metal detectors, into the doors. That door, when it was finally shut, it did not automatically lock. And we put in the funding for schools to do that. This was a different kind of lock that had to be activated, apparently. And we train our teachers to carry if they wish. Look, we've got about 9,000 campuses in Texas, 1,200 school districts, 5.5 million kids in public schools. We left these decisions to be optional by the school districts. But the point is that no matter what we do, and we should have one entrance in and one entrance out of every school. It should be bulletproof glass on the front, a vestibule, another bulletproof glass, and that's what should happen. And so when the doors are open and police don't follow protocol, these things happen. But I joined the governor. I'm angry. It should not have happened. But my focus is on the families, and that's what we have to focus on, is healing them during this time and put politics aside.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, thank you for your time. You're right. Ultimately, you want cops charging to the sound of the guns. And for some reason, that didn't happen here. Thanks for your insight. God bless you. Appreciate your time.